You always hope the moment your life changes forever will feel grand, cinematic even. But for me, it was just a room filled with fake smiles, old carpet, and the scratching sound of a lawyer clearing his throat before reading my fate. To our beloved son, Craig, we leave the family estate, the business assets, the house, and the vehicles. To Randy, we leave the parcel of land on Milner Road. I blinked. I actually blinked and looked around like maybe someone else was going to speak up. Like maybe there was a page missing. A mistake. A bad joke. But the room was silent. Craig sat next to Mom and Dad, grinning like a child who just got the biggest slice of cake at the table. He always was their golden boy. Star athlete. Loudest voice. Always the first in everything, even when I worked twice as hard. Mom didn't look at me. Neither did Dad. I finally spoke, voice steady but cold. That's it. The lawyer glanced awkwardly between us. That's what was specified in the will. I laughed, bitter, sharp, ugly. That land on Milner Road? It was a joke. A literal family joke. Back when I was a teenager, Dad used to call it the gravel graveyard. It was a rocky, weed-ridden piece of dirt that couldn't grow anything but regret. Used to be a scrapyard, then sat abandoned for years. And now. That was my legacy. Craig leaned back in his chair. Come on, man. It's not like you ever wanted to run the business. You always had your little projects. My jaw tightened. You mean the logistics plans I drafted to save the warehouse 3 winters ago? No one responded. They'd made their choice. Long before today. I was just too blind to see it. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor, the only noise in the room. Thanks for the clarity. And I walked out. Not just from the room, from their lives. It's funny. You always imagine your big exit from a toxic place with fireworks or slamming doors. I didn't do any of that. I packed up my things in silence that night. A duffel bag, a toolbox, a laptop that still ran slower than a snail uphill. I left the keys to the company truck on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door like it was just another Tuesday. No one said goodbye. Not Mom, who used to read bedtime stories only to Craig after I turned 7. Not Dad, who always said, Craig's just built for business, as if I didn't spend my weekends managing the warehouse logistics during high school. And definitely not Craig, who once told me, to my face, that I was the supporting character in this family. I drove straight to Milner Road. When I got there, I parked and stepped out of my beat-up pickup. I looked around at the land, cracked dirt, broken fence posts, leftover metal scrap, weeds that looked like they'd been working out. It was exactly what I remembered. Ugly, forgotten, worthless. But somehow, it felt like mine. It felt honest. More honest than my whole family had ever been. I pulled out an old camp chair from the back seat, cracked open a bottle of warm water, and sat down as the sun dipped behind the dry hills. All right, gravel graveyard, I muttered. Let's prove them wrong. The first day I decided to take that scrap of land seriously, I knew it wouldn't be easy. Nobody handed me a blueprint or a business plan. I had nothing but grit, a little savings, and an unshakable determination. I spent weeks researching everything I could about land development, zoning laws, and small business grants. That junkyard wasn't just a pile of rocks, it was a blank canvas, waiting for someone crazy enough to see potential in it. The nights were the worst. Sleeping in my truck, waking up covered in sweat or freezing in the biting cold, with the sounds of coyotes howling in the distance. No running water, no electricity, just me and the land. Every day, I woke before dawn and worked until dusk. Clearing brush, hauling away debris, fixing the broken fence. I wasn't just building a business, I was rebuilding myself. I turned to online videos for advice on everything from installing septic tanks to small-scale construction. When money was tight, I slept on a friend's couch or traded favors for tools and materials. By the end of the first year, my efforts paid off. I built a dozen storage units that I rented out to local businesses needing extra space. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady income. I didn't stop there. Word got around about my little operation. More businesses wanted storage. I reinvested every penny back into the land, building more units, fixing roads, and even adding a small office. By year 3, I had nearly 50 rental units and was running a modest trucking company to support local deliveries. The junky patch of land had transformed into a buzzing hub of activity. People who once mocked me called me the miracle man. My bank account grew, and with it, my confidence. I wasn't just the kid who got cheated out of his inheritance anymore. I was the man who turned trash into treasure. While I was building my empire from scratch, my brother Craig was spiraling. I heard through the grapevine that he was sinking deeper into debt. The family business, once a sprawling success, was now bleeding money. He'd made risky loans, fired competent managers, and spent more on lavish parties than on running the company. My parents tried to keep it quiet, but the truth was clear: Craig had no idea how to hold what was handed to him. Eventually, the family estate was sold piece by piece just to pay off mounting debts. My parents, who once looked down on me for having no ambition, were now living in a rented townhouse under Craig's name, desperate to hold on to the last shred of dignity. They started calling me. Messages flooded my phone, texts from Dad, emails from Mom, even birthday cards with no signatures but heavy with guilt. They wanted to reconnect. To be part of my success. I listened once or twice, but the sting of betrayal ran deep. I remembered the cold looks, the whispers behind my back, the endless favoritism. And I knew one thing: I wasn't about to let them walk back into my life like nothing had happened. It wasn't long before the calls started. At first, they were polite. Innocent, even. "Randy, son, we just want to see you. It's been so long. Your family. We can work through this." Mom's voice sounded fragile, like she was tiptoeing around something fragile. Dad's emails were filled with nostalgic stories from when we were kids, like they were trying to rebuild a bridge that they themselves burned. Then, the tone shifted. One afternoon, I got a call from Dad. "Son, things are tight. You know Craig's been struggling with the company. Maybe you could help us out, even just a little. It's family." I swallowed my coffee slowly, the bitterness now matching my thoughts. Family, I repeated, isn't an excuse to take advantage. I laid it out clearly. I wasn't a charity. I wasn't going to bail out the brother who wasted everything or the parents who turned a blind eye to favoritism. They had their chances. Now, if they wanted anything from me, it would be on my terms. The calls started daily, politely enough, little by little. Their real intentions became clear. One evening, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Randy, honey, it's been a while. We're just having a tough time. Craig's debts are piling up, and we don't know where to turn." Her voice was soft, almost pleading. I replied evenly, "Mom, I'm sorry to hear that. But you know I can't just give you money." There was a pause. "It's family, Randy. You have to help us." I sighed. This was it, the moment they tried to pull the family card. But after years of being the forgotten son, the scapegoat, I wasn't falling for it anymore. The next day, Dad called. His tone was sharper, less patient. "Son, don't make this harder than it has to be. You owe your family." "I owe my family respect." I said, "Not a bailout. You're being selfish. Think about your mother, your father. We gave you life. You also chose to favor one child and throw the other away. That's not my debt to pay." As the days passed, their calls became more desperate, and more aggressive. Craig even called once, trying to guilt-trip me. We're family, man. You're rich now. Why not share some of that? I didn't answer. Instead, I blocked their number. Then came the visits. Mom showed up at my office, eyes red from crying. Randy, please. You're the only one who can save us. I looked at her, really looked. This wasn't about family anymore, it was about control. Mom, I won't be your ATM. That was the moment I realized they never wanted to reconcile. They just wanted my money. And no amount of blood ties was going to change that. I closed the door gently, but firmly. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. At first, it was just words. The calls, the pleading, the guilt trips. But when those didn't work, they went further. Much further. One evening, after a long day sealing a deal that would finally transform my little patch of land into a real empire, I pulled into my driveway only to find my truck's tires slashed. Flat, useless, and impossible to ignore. My heart sank, but I told myself it could be random vandalism. Maybe a jealous competitor. Then, a few nights later, someone tried to break into my home. I was out late. But my neighbor's security cameras caught a shadowy figure attempting to jimmy the lock. The police were called, but there were no arrests. The handwriting on the wall was clear. It wasn't a stranger. It was my family. Mom's sweet voice on the phone had turned cold and threatening behind closed doors. Randy, you're making us suffer. You think you're so smart with your money. But money can be taken away. Dad, once calm and stoic, showed his true colors when he cornered me at a restaurant. You think you can abandon your family and walk away? You're going to regret this. My brother Craig was even worse. He spread rumors about me, about shady deals, about cheating partners, trying to isolate me socially and professionally. I realized they wanted to break me, to scare me into giving up my hard-earned success. But I wasn't going to back down. I installed security cameras, hired personal protection, and kept detailed logs of every threat and incident. The day came when I finally confronted them face to face. This stops now, I said firmly. You don't scare me. You lost your chance when you tried to tear me down. They blinked, surprised to see the fire in my eyes, the fire of someone who had been underestimated for too long. And from that day, the lines were clear. I wasn't just fighting for money or inheritance. I was fighting for my life, my dignity, and my future. After the threats and sabotage, I knew I couldn't just rely on luck or hope. It was time to get serious. I contacted a lawyer, a sharp one who didn't just see me as a client, but as someone who needed a shield. We filed restraining orders against my parents and brother. Every incident, the slashed tires, the break-in attempt, the threatening messages, was documented, time-stamped, and brought before the court. The judge didn't hesitate. A clear message was sent, I was off limits. That court ruling was more than just legal protection. It was a statement to my family that I was done being their punching bag. I also cut off all communication except through my attorney. No more phone calls, no more visits. I blocked their numbers, emails, social media, every possible channel they could use to harass me. But it wasn't just legal action. It was a personal boundary that I finally enforced after years of being overlooked and mistreated. With the past behind me, I focused on my land and my vision. I poured everything into turning that forgotten patch into something extraordinary, a business park that became a hub of opportunity for my community. Success followed, but this time, it tasted different. It wasn't just about money. It was about self-respect, independence, and proving to myself that I was worth more than their neglect. Years later, when news spread that my brother had squandered the family fortune, the tables had turned completely. But I didn't gloat or rub it in their faces. I simply lived my life, on my own terms. Because true victory isn't about bringing others down, it's about rising up and never letting anyone dim your light again.